Thanks for tuning into the Hidden Tracks podcast. You can find us wherever you find podcasts or listen to music. When you have an opportunity, please give us a 5-star review, write a little note, tell us how we're doing. We really appreciate it. It helps us keep this thing going. If you want to reach out to us, you can find us at Facebook at Hidden Tracks. Instagram is at HiddenTracks99, and if you'd like to send in submissions or talk to us or give us any feedback about what we're doing, our email is myhiddentracks99@gmail.com. Thank you so much again for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show.
I spent most my life searching high and low for this, but something's holding back my deserved happiness. Someday that might change, but for now I'm holding out until I find my place, a reason with my doubt. I'll follow, and I'll leave behind all my sorrow. Oh, the something bigger than my name. But I know that you'll be there when I reach that mountain top, and I'll shake off my despair as I plant my flag atop.
What's up, everybody? Another week, another edition of the show. This week, I'm very pleased to have Ed from Driftwood Choir on with us today. If you know anything, you've probably heard in previous episodes me talk about Driftwood Choir, so it's always a pleasure to have someone that I've mentioned before on the show. So welcome to the show, Ed. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure, and I'm so glad that you like what we've been doing so far.
Well, it's kind of like that honey hole for me, where there's two voices, right? And we'll get to how you guys kind of came together. But when I have those two vocal harmonies, anyone who's probably tired of listening to me talk about it on the show, but I mean, my first foray into music was hearing the Beach Boys when I was 6 years old, and the vocal harmonies and melodies, and that's literally where my allegiance lies in music, is having that sound of the two voices coming together and making beautiful music. So you kind of got right to me with that.
That's great. No, yeah, a huge fan as well, and that it was just so clear with us that it was such a nice mix that it's going to be a repeating theme when I talk about Driftwood Choir. But Drew and I, whenever we do anything together, we sort of always bring out the best version of the other person in all of our collaborations, whether it's songwriting, whether it's singing, whether it's whatever. We have a great way of working together that really turns into something unique and special on its own. That I'm really glad that you recognize.
Now let's get into real quick how you guys kind of met, because I think it's a pretty interesting story that you're born in the U.S., live in the Europe, and he's Australia. You're like, how does this whole venture come to be? That is Driftwood Choir.
Well, it's just on a technical level, it's very simple. But when you look a little bit deeper, it's just funny how similar we are. So we're on the same label, Nettwerk, which is the label out of Canada that has so many wonderful singer-songwriters from all over the world, from Australia, from England, from America, even here in Germany, where we currently are. And I had recently just signed with them, and my A&R here said, "Hey, there's this Australian singer-songwriter coming through. Would you like to write with him?" And I said yes. And he came by the studio, which, not to skip ahead, is actually now our shared studio that we use together here in Berlin. And we sat down and we wrote Constantinople, which was the first song that we ever wrote together. And it was just clear from the get-go that it was going to be a great collaboration, right? That I had taken Constantinople was a musical idea that I personally had struggled with for, I think, about a year and a half before Drew came and figured the whole thing out with me. Just that it was this musical idea that I knew could be something great. And he came in and just made the whole thing easy. And that is sort of the nature of our collaboration there. But anyway, so he, coming from Los Angeles, technically, in this, because he'd been living there for 7 years, and me living here in Germany for the better part of 9 years, had sort of had very similar lives in this singer-songwriter sphere that are very parallel, just somehow completely missing each other until this wonderful moment where we were able to put that first song together. And then it just became so clear that this needed to be a more serious thing. And actually, when we first released Constantinople, it was just as Ed Prosek and Portair, and the idea sort of morphed, and we convinced Nettwerk to take it seriously, and the whole idea of Driftwood Choir then came together sort of on the fly, which is also really like wonderful, because it just happened sort of organically. It wasn't pre-planned. It was just, everything was so comfortable that it just melded together.
Well, I'm glad it did, and I mean it's proof in the pudding that sometimes when you do have two great individual artists, when they come together, they can form. It's like Voltron, right? A bunch of tiny little line bots create one mega, robot.
Feels like
that. Right? So it's really cool to see what came of it, and listening to you guys as individuals and then coming together. It's clear that there is some, like, it's almost like you see some sparkles when you hear the songs, because you're like, oh wow, that really, it works. And when you meet that person, and he kind of takes helps you, or takes a hold of a song that you've been struggling with for a little while, when it comes to fruition and you finally get it out there, what were your thoughts about when you're like, okay, here's this new thing, I've been struggling with this, we kind of got it locked in, and now we're going to put it out in the world to judge? What was your feelings at that moment when you were ready to like just put it out there and like say, let's see what happens? Were there any apprehensions to that, or was it total excitement that you were going to have, like, you thought things were going to change?
Well, here's a little sort of behind the scenes view into the music industry and the way that it all works, and the sort of forethought you need. By the time Constantinople, so we wrote it and we got so excited. By the time that it actually came out, we had already then moved further along in the album. You know what I mean? So by the time that first song came out and we saw that it did very well for a first song for a brand new project, um, we had already written 3 or 4 songs together, and every single one had almost gotten better. You know what I mean? That like this project was very much built on the momentum of that collaboration right at the start. So when that song came out, um, it was just the sort of validation of the things that we were already feeling. Does that does that make sense? That not that we weren't grateful and not surprised. It was received very well, and the all of the signs that we look for what's going to do well in a song were ticked right away, and things moved easier, and the sort of constellation of the way that we were doing things was easier. But we had already written quite a few songs, and we were already starting to play around with the idea of, hey, is this can we make this into something more? And so yeah, for us it was just that was like the first real proof of what we already sort of knew to be true.
All right. Yeah, no, so because like I was wondering, especially in the world where we are today, like there's these one-offs. Like, hey, let's throw this single out there, and maybe we'll come back together in a year to see after how that did. Um, where it's just such a different world from where we once were music creation. So that's why I didn't know if you guys were just like, hey, wow, that seemed easy. Let's keep going. As opposed to, hey, that was really cool. It was nice working with you. Let's throw it out, see what happens, and maybe we'll come back and do some more. So,
those things don't have to be mutually exclusive. They're sort of all together. That they just happen very fast. And the idea of the album as well, that it sort of then blossomed into this full thing, and we developed then our lexicon as a band. That all happened on the fly. But yeah, I think to your point, it happened because we really enjoyed doing it. And it happened because it was an authentic, and it happened so fast because it was an authentic feeling. It was really, this works incredibly well. Not from how it performs on DSPs or whatever, but this works really well from a songwriting perspective. This works really well on a personal perspective. The music industry as well is a difficult, uh, thing to navigate. And
yeah.
both Drew and I have extremely similar views and extremely similar uh, experiences navigating the music industry for, I mean, in my case, a decade, and his as well. And that makes the partnership so easy. It makes those questions that you have if you're doing this for the first time, they disappear. We come at it from such a wonderful balance, and so to that end, no, it wasn't well, let's see if this works. It was, this works, let's do more of this because it feels good. This feels right. It says something that both of us felt that we couldn't say alone. um
Yeah, it was organic as opposed to being created in a lab. Yeah.
Totally.
So that's where magic happens. That's why the vegetables taste good. So let me dive into your early life. I had mentioned the Beach Boys when I was 6 years old, hearing that, and here I am, almost 50 years old, and music is still just this huge thing in my life, to the point where following a dream and opening a record store and a music venue later on in life was like, hey, let's just fucking do this. So let's start at your life early on. What got you did you grow up in a musical household? Was there always music on? Do you kind of remember that first musical memory you had of what you heard and kind of piqued your interest in music?
Totally. So I grew up in a very musical household. My mother is an opera composer, and in Northern California. And when I was a kid, she noticed that I had a sort of natural aptitude. I mean, I was pulling the pots and pans out of the at 3 years old, out of every cabinet and banging on them like a drum, to the point that she was like, okay, we need to put you in some kind of musical training, or I'm going to, do something bad. And so she took me to a music shop and she said, all right, pick one. And I thankfully picked the trumpet, um, and started a lifelong relationship with classical music. And uh, with her help, I got into the San Francisco Conservatory of Music, and I studied classical music for about, uh, 15, almost 20 years. All the while starting to write music on the side, obviously, because it was a familial sort of a familial work that we all did, learning from my mother to write stuff. And that, funnily enough, sort of at the beginning, worked its way into my life through, death metal and the angsty teenage stuff that everybody goes through. But then, weirdly enough, when I was about 15, 16, I started my first singer-songwriter duo band. It was short-lived and it didn't go very far.
What was
But
that
it's
called?
funny, it didn't even really get that far. I don't think it had a name.
It had to have a name. When you're kids, the name's more important than what you're actually doing.
All of my other bands had names that I'm not going to repeat on air, but that one weirdly, that one didn't. Though it had such a huge impact on my life and set me into the world of singer-songwriting. I think it was me and a friend of mine named Nick. I think it was just like Ed and Nick. I mean, we didn't really think very hard about it. Yeah.
All right. So you go from getting that trumpet, right? And you talk about that angsty stuff in teenagers, and you're growing up with this background and starting really young. But do you kind of remember the band where you found your pocket? You talked about angsty teen music, but like where you kind of started this whole other world of music discovery other than what you're, growing up and your mother showing you and what you were learning classically?
Yeah. And it was started with a lifelong friend now, who I met briefly before then, who's a drummer who played drums like exactly like what's the name of the drummer from the Police? Now his name,
Uh,
Carpenter.
Stuart Copeland.
Stuart Copeland. There we go. Yeah, played exactly like a 15-year-old Stuart Copeland would have. Everything too fast. Really excitable. I loved it, and we started a duo, sort of in the vein of that band Two Gallants from San Francisco.
Two Gallants. No, I don't.
Um,
Now I'm writing it down.
Duo, totally in the weeds, really cool stuff. Uh, but started in that vein, and it sort of made its way all the way stylistically from like grindcore punk, which was something that I liked at the time, to almost like psychedelic folk. And that was the first time that I was in uh, a band that really challenged me musically and forced me to become a better songwriter and forced me to start listening. We booked a couple little stinky shows here or there, but nothing too serious because we were 16, I think. But that for me was such a wonderful thing to work with such a talented musician, and now he's very successful and has a studio in Valencia, Spain. And we're still very close friends. But such a great origin, and the thing that sort of gave me the confidence, not from any kind of important thing, but just from like a songwriting perspective of what I'm doing here is kind of very important to me. And it's something I really want to spend as much time as I possibly can doing. And when I seem to show it to other people, they like it as well. And there might be a future here. And yeah, that was a very, very important moment for me. And I was still doing the classical music thing. And obviously that was the beginnings of my starting to take seriously the idea of pursuing my own songwriting as something I really wanted to do later on.
So when you're creating music, do you, and even on a simpler base of even like a grindcore, do you take your classical training with you when creating different tones? Because there's complexity behind that to maybe a more simplistic form of, a punk or grindcore type of style of music.
Here's the thing. Whenever somebody wants to prove to you musically that they study classical music or that they have an interest in it, you can always hear it. I always sort of a little bit, yeah, it's not that I here. There's two ways of thought. You can take something simple and you can make it sound complicated, or you can take something complicated and make it sound simple. And I think that second one was always my goal. That the classical music and the education that I had and the sort of training that I had, and just like the musical sea that I swam in for so long, you can't help but have it influence, every little aesthetic you have when it comes to musical choices and when it comes to arrangement choices. So yes, to answer your question bluntly, yeah, totally. I mean, it comes into everything I do. I try not to be aware of it. I try not to lean on it. I try not to focus on it too much because it's going to come out anyway. And when we have an idea that's in a strange time signature or something complex, I try to do the most that I can to cover that up, if that makes sense, with arrangements, so that the listener doesn't have to pay attention to that. They can just experience something that's perhaps, maybe not a run of the mill idea, but uh, without tripping over it, without calling undue focus to the fact that it's perhaps a little more complex. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Because, and I believe there's a lot, in music styles throughout the world where I can understand why certain people don't like, you look at math rock, this, as they call it, math rock, because it's complex. There's so many different time signatures and everything, and people can't wrap their heads around it. And they'll be like, that is just horrible music. And it's like, well, it's because it's complicated, and the average listener doesn't understand what's going on, and maybe how complex it is and how amazing certain changes are, that you're like, holy shit, how the fuck did they do that? Where a lot of people are just looking for that, sultry sound in their ears
It's
to
it's
just be
in,
like, oh, okay, there it is. It just flows, and it's easy for me to listen to, and I don't have to think about anything.
Sure, and it's also, I mean, when we talk about like math rock or prog or any of those things, or even a lot of almost all modern classical music, it's impressive because of the complexity. When and there's nothing wrong with that. It's fun. It's like it's the sport of music to a
Yeah,
certain
and
degree, right? It's watching
yeah,
it's watching incredibly uh I don't know, but technical sportmen do something absolutely sort of beyond recognition, right? It's impressive because of the complexity. But for me, when it comes to music, I've always been more of the, in terms of the music that I listen to, and not that there's anything better or worse, obviously, because it is subjective. But for me, I always think that the underlying message is the thing that's the most important. It's not like a specific message, but what is it that you're trying to say? What is that message that is coming through the music? Does your music speak from your soul? And I always think that the way to do that is by removing those obstacles or covering them up when they are an integrated part. I mean, one of the songs from our album, Way Back Home, which is sort of the poppiest song of all of them. I love it. Again, an older idea. The chorus is a bar of four and a bar of three, uh, and you don't notice. And that's not particularly complicated, but for a sort of a big chorus, 7/4 is, a little. It could be jarring if you brought more attention to it, but it doesn't stick out. I think it's a bar of seven and a bar of eight.
it's palatable. As you look at things like that. I think I had a conversation with them, like, because to me in music, you brought up like prog rock, like, so like Rush. Neil Peart to me is the greatest drummer of all time, and I'm like, he's not the greatest drummer because he played in 4/4 all the time, but it's because it almost sounded like that.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm trying
Yeah,
to say. You make the complex uh, digestible.
yeah,
Um, and I think that, yeah, I mean, it depends on the time. Right now, I think in total, music is very simple, and a little complexity goes a long way, just in terms of making things more unique. But certainly in the time that I was growing up, everybody just wanted to do as complex a thing. And if you grow up around classical musicians, around people that want to go into bands, it's always about us. How complicated can I possibly make this? And so I remember that urge. Um, I try to fight it, unless it comes out naturally. Which, going back to your original question, is exactly how it manifests itself. You'll have these ideas that, to you, sound. If you study classical music, you have these ideas that sound perfectly simple. And it's only when you try to then explain it to somebody else or try to get somebody else to play it that you realize how complicated it is. And I've, in my catalog, I've done a lot of that. And that's part of the fun too. Whenever I have a band, getting people to sing and clap 3 against 4, doing all kinds of stuff with weird time signatures. It's fun. That makes it entertaining and it makes it exciting. And it sort of brings the whole group dynamic together as well. So, I mean, I'm very grateful for my classical roots. And I do try to, and I acknowledge that they're a big part of how I think. And I'm grateful for that.
Now, I'm guessing that with your mother growing up with the operatic background, there was probably some early live performances that you got to attend. So, do you remember the first like concert or event you ever saw as a child?
That I attended as an audience member?
Yeah.
I think it was. I actually don't think it was the influence of my mother at all. I think it was my dad, who's not musical whatsoever. I think he took me to a Paco de Lucia concert in San Francisco when I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, and I still remember it to this day. And I go through these long phases of listening to his work. It's one of those things that really, concerts at that age really stick in your brain.
Yeah.
Uh,
First time I saw boobs, it was Kenny Rogers, my first concert ever. And it wasn't because I wanted to. It was just because the
no,
women were throwing their
yeah,
bras on stage. It was
there you
weird.
go.
It was,
There
yeah,
you go.
for Kenny Rogers in 1982.
Yeah, I think that was my first, but certainly the one that sticks out to me the most is my first memorable.
Do you remember the first concert you got to pick to go to on your own?
Wow, no, I don't know. I have no idea. Because of the classical music thing, I got into playing so many concerts. It sort of became, I don't want to say old hat, but it was just like a regular occurrence. So things don't jump out at me of like, what was a concert that I wanted to go to? It might have been like, I don't even know. No, it's, no, I don't have a good answer for you. I can't remember. I can't remember. We were in my defense, we were in rural North California, 3 hours north of San Francisco. So there were not a lot of concerts going on from bands that anybody knew.
All right. So if you played tons of shows, how about do you remember your first like performance in front of strangers?
Uh, yeah, more or less. I joined the Santa Rosa Junior Symphony as a trumpet player when I was, I don't know, I must have been like 9 years old. And we started to do those little, you sort of drive around Northern California, you do a concert here, you do a concert there, and you get into the swing of things. And God, we started so early playing like Gustav Holst. I mean, I can't imagine what it would have sounded like, right? A bunch of 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds playing Mars by Holst. I'm sure it sounded awful, but it was so much fun to do that. Um, uh, so my early concert experience from a very early age, yeah, I must have been like, I guess 10, 9, was doing that kind of stuff in real concert halls around Northern California. Which, then you get into pop music later on, and it's a massive uh, uh, step down on the rung of where you're playing and what you're doing when you first start out. So,
All right. How about a show in your life for good or bad through your entire career? I always say there's a show or two that occupies this like little space in your mind, in your brain that pops up when you least expect it, and it's because of either a good or bad reason, but it's a performance in your career that you're just never going to forget about.
oh, I have a lot of positive ones, but I kind of want to think of a negative one, just because that might be more fun.
It
Uh,
usually is more fun.
yeah,
It
God.
lets people into, hey, I'm not perfect, even though I want to come off as perfect.
uh, Give me a second. Yeah, okay. I mean, so I, let's see, let's see. I mean, for me, let's start with a positive one. Maybe that'll give me enough time to think of a negative one on the back end of it. I played the release show for my EP in 2019, and it was here in Berlin, and we played at this beautiful venue called the Maschinenhaus. And harkening back to when I first started the project of in my project at Prosek, I used to have a string quartet in the band, and we were extremely poor at the very beginning, but there were a lot of us, so we would all have to jam ourselves in like tiny little Peugeot cars with double basses and cellos and everything, and drive across England to go play a show in some tiny little horrible bar for basically beer money rather than actual money. And in order to sort of get back to my roots there, I did this EP launch here, and I rearranged everything for strings, and so we were able to take this little tour to Budapest then, and I ended up playing all of these songs that I'd arranged for strings with the Budapest studio orchestra, I think they were called, which was like a 40-person string orchestra in this wonderful auditorium that now the name blanks on me. But it was such a wonderful experience seeing this incredible, bookend experience where I'd started doing this, and obviously due to how complicated it is to organize that many people and expensive, whatever, I stopped playing with my string choir or my string quartet, and only to end up there with a full string orchestra accompanying some of those same songs that I'd been playing for that long when they were a bit older. That was just such a wonderful experience, and that again is part of me quoting always my classical background. That it's very important for me, at least just in my mind, to still be activating that part of my brain, even if it's not super present. So yeah, that for me was a really big moment to bring it all together. It's been a wonderful show.
Nice. Did you think of the horrible one yet?
No, I don't even really have I don't have a memory of a bad show, which is kind of crazy. Like, I've played bad shows, but they were just sort of lame, where like nobody showed up. I remember I was in a funk band in England, a great funk band, like white boy funk.
Yeah.
Called Mean Papa Lean, which is just like such a good name. And they broke up a long time ago, and I was only in it for like the last year. But they would do things like they basically got paid to go like get drunk somewhere. It was like we would play like an hour-long set, but then you were there for the whole weekend. And all these venues would pay this band to show up and just get shit-faced for 2 days straight. And the trombone player vomited on stage, and everybody got into some kind of ugly shit before the time was over. But it was fun. It wasn't really bad. I actually had them. I put the band back together, flew them from all corners of the earth for my wedding back in 2022, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made. But in terms of a specifically bad show experience, I don't know.
All right. That's fine. I'll allow you to be
just
perfect.
Lame. Just not like story worthy. Just sort of like, oh God, really?
Not falling off stage and breaking your leg like Dave Grohl or something.
It's singer-songwriter music. It's like you kind of stand there with your skinny jeans and
or if you're on a stool, I mean, your fall isn't that far, so
yeah. I'm built well, I don't really bruise that easily. No, it's not a dangerous sport. Let's just put it that way. Yeah, apart from like, you're on some bigger venue and they don't hook up the electricity right, and you get a light electrical shock on your lips when you sing. Oh no, like that's the
just wakes you up.
It's really not very dangerous.
Just wakes you up from playing your last sleepy song, maybe sometimes.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of songs, with this venture that is Driftwood Choir, if no one had ever knew you created music, never heard a song, and you say, I'm an artist and this is what I'm creating now, what one song, you can only play in one song that you would say, this is the song you need to listen to. What song of Driftwood Choir would you play for them?
100% The River.
I've been moving backwards, feels like I've been here before. I hear it calling to me, another door revolving, shipwrecked here upon the shore. Will I wake from this dream, and all this weight I carry, from all these versions of myself? Now it's time to come clean. So you jump in the river, 'cause you can't live without it. And the tide draws you deeper, and it chews you up and spits you out. So you jump in the river, and it's all unfamiliar. You give in to the water, and it chews you up and shows you how to flow. And this is how you learn it's time to let go. Where's this place I'm going? Who's the face that's looking back? I see it ripple and change. Are we ordinary? Are we missing something here? Oh, it's time to come clean. So you jump in the river, 'cause you can't live without it. And the tide draws you deeper, and it chews you up and spits you out. So you jump in the river, and it's all unfamiliar. You give in to the water, and it chews you up and spits you out. So you jump in the river, 'cause you can't live without it. And the tide draws you deeper, and it chews you up and spits you out. Chews you up, 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 shows you how. And this is how you learn it's time to let go.
It's my absolute favorite song. I think it does everything that Driftwood Choir does, and for me personally, it's an extremely important song because it puts together. And this is something that happened with a lot of these songs. They were musical ideas that I struggled with and could not figure out on my own, and I brought them to Drew, and he sort of worked magic on them, and we were able to turn them into songs. But the river in particular, it has this thing at the end where you take the melodic idea, just a repeating thing, and you add elements, and you add elements, and you add elements, and you add elements, and it stacks into this wonderful spinning construction at the end. And that is the choir element of Driftwood Choir, right? Like, why is a 2-person band called choir? It's because we always get there. You know, these songs always have these big big instrumentation parts at the ends of the song that really it takes you from point A to somewhere new. And the river for me exemplifies that perfectly.
Nice. I love how fast you had that, and then you answered the follow-up question really fast, and that was it was usually, well, is that your favorite? Because sometimes the song that you play for someone isn't necessarily your favorite. You just think like, hey, here you go, this is what you should listen.
Well, you said if nobody knew what you did, you wanted to show them the thing, and so that's my favorite. That's the one I can get the most excited about. I love all of these songs, and all of these songs say something unique and say it really well, in my opinion. That songs like Blue Light Escape really counterbalance that by going off in a completely different direction. Still, as I said earlier, it's about what you're trying to say. And all of these songs, whenever I'm involved in songwriting, whenever I do these kinds of things, it's always an arrangement as well. It's always about taking you from somewhere to somewhere else, right? You always want to be going on a musical journey, and arrangement wise, it has to develop, it has to turn into something new and hopefully to a certain degree unexpected, in a good way. And I think that's super important for me.
Now, what brought you to end up in Europe for as long as you have? Like, what traveling around making music, what made you land and your home base is where you are now?
So my dad is Czech, and he escaped before the wall fell, and he was a refugee in Italy, and then in Canada, and then he immigrated to the United States shortly before I was born. And when I was born in '91, the wall had just fallen, and
I remember
so
watching it on TV in school. I mean, what a moment.
what a moment. I mean, and I wasn't there for it, but I heard enough
Yeah.
about it. And now I
Yeah.
live in a city that is, still scarred by the wall. Uh, God, in our building where our studio is, there were bullet holes. I mean, obviously from a different conflict in the facade of the building before they redid it when I first moved in. So I mean, a city that has been shaped by world events. But anyway, my father then was desperate to go see his family, which he hadn't seen for years. Uh, Shortly after I was born, and so we would kind of make a trip to Central and Central Europe every chance we got. My mother had a lot of family in Italy, and my father had a lot of family in Czech Republic, and so we were here. All of my favorite childhood memories, right, were
Yeah.
in Europe, going to Europe, and not being able to communicate with any of the other kids, but doing something in the yard anyway. Uh, and Czech Republic is such a wonderful country, so full of like medieval culture and architecture, and it was so impressive that it just stuck in my mind. And so then it was sort of subconscious, but yeah, everything I was ever doing after that was trying to get back here. And so the first chance I got, I moved to England, and from there I made my way here to Germany, which was never really like the plan, but I signed a publishing deal with BMG Germany ages ago. And so I had this network here, and Berlin is a super cool town. I don't know if you've ever been, but it's a fantastic town. It's a fantastic town for art as well, and it was just a natural fit. And I never left. Now I'm married to a German. I'm integrating slowly. It was always a lifetime obsession. My father, having grown up in the Eastern Bloc, will never understand why he worked so hard to get to America. And I just took the first train back to where he started. But, now it's so long that he can't even complain anymore.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's great. And I mean, the struggle that your your father probably had is, to give his family a better life and to constantly go back, and then for you to now appreciate that, where it all started that's pretty awesome and spectacular of you as a son. So
yeah, I mean, well, if you show your kid a good time, they'll
yeah.
they'll be inspired by your former life.
That's like, you talk about the architecture and the medieval. I I always remember it has nothing to do with anything musically, but hearing the line, I think it was Eddie Izzard at one point, he's like, why Disney Europe failed is because we actually have castles here.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100. What is it? What is a plastic castle?
Yeah.
Next to, like in Prague, there is a gigantic castle and cathedral sitting up on top of the city. Why would you ever then go to go see a plastic version of the same thing? I mean, yeah. Look, Europe has that. Europe has plenty of is lacking plenty of things, but that is something they have.
It's where history began.
Yeah,
as you said.
Yeah, for sure.
Because history began here. We have actual castles. So I understand why it works in the US, but not here.
Yeah. No, and I love Germany, and it's been a really wonderful place to grow and build everything that I've done. And it's a Berlin in particular is a fantastic music city.
All right. In your lifetime now, do you have a constant, like a band or an artist that you constantly listen to? Rolling Stone categorizes it as your favorite band, but like an artist that I always say it never lets you down. It's always there when you need it. Just like music. I love music. I always say music is always there for you. It never judges you. It's there when you need it, and it's there when you don't. But do you have a specific artist, one or two that you constantly turn to when you don't know what to listen to? You're just going to put it on and you're just like, yeah, this is never going to let me down.
For my whole life.
Yeah.
That's This stuff. Okay, well then look, then I'll approach it from a songwriting perspective, which is I owe a lot to uh, primarily Paul Simon, and I like the juxtaposition of Paul Simon and Sting because look, I don't know much about. I try not to research the musicians I love too much because I love the mystery and I love the image I create in my mind, and I know plenty about both of them. But from what I can gather, Paul Simon is methodical and he's thoughtful and he's thinking about every line and he's careful and he's really intent on saying something every time he says something, and he's insecure and he's concerned about the what the response to his music is going to be, and he's so careful, and his music is fantastic. I mean, like he is, yeah, I would say he's probably my favorite songwriter if you had to ask. And, and then Sting is sort of the opposite of that, where you just get the feeling he just did whatever came to him, and it's this like shooting by the hip kind of songwriting, goofy, irreverent. And later, I mean, Police Sting, not Sting Sting. Uh, and for me, growing up, those two sides of songwriting were so important. To just go with the idea that comes to you, to go with the thing that hits you like a truck, but then make sure that you cross all your T's and dot all your I's. Do it in a way that is with meaning, with purpose. And I think the two of them, for me, sit on sort of opposite pillars. I mean, in reality, they're not that far apart, but you know what I mean. For me, in terms of the philosophy that I sort of projected and then got back from them, in terms of their songwriting, and those are the two. I mean, anytime I put on the Police, anytime I put on Simon and Garfunkel, but then like Graceland and all that stuff, it's just so genius. He's just so great. He's so sad, so nostalgic. It's so sad. You don't even know what he's saying half the time, but God, it just gets you.
Yeah. I love, so you bring up sometimes you don't know what they're saying. Sometimes you can't understand words, which is, I had a conversation, had an artist the other day came to me, played me some new music, and I said, listen, the vocals, I'm very honest when people approach me, some to a fault. But I'm like, dude, the vocals are fucking terrible. You're enunciating. Like you can tell. I'm like, and then I start playing certain songs by certain people. I'm like, you hear this song? Do you know what the fuck they're saying? And he's like,
oh wait, sorry, you were taking umbrage with the fact that he was enunciating.
Yeah, and I was like, do you understand? I'm like, you don't understand what he's saying all the time because he's not fully enunciating. I'm like, but it's the feeling he's emoting. Like, you can know what you're saying, but you're enunciating every single word in your lyrics. I'm like, and then I start playing songs. He's like, I get it. I was like, when you play guitar, like he's a phenomenal guitarist too. I'm like, when you play guitar, you close your eyes and you play, right? He's like, yeah. I go, you need to do the same thing when you fucking sing. I'm like, because you are really focusing on making sure that what you're trying to convey is going to be conveyed. I'm like, but you can listen to some of the greatest fucking singers of all time, some of the greatest lyricists, some of the greatest artists. I'm like, nobody knows what fucking Bob Dylan says. Like, and he's one of the greatest writers of all time. Like, so just fucking emote.
I'm not sure I can get 100% on board with this. I think enunciation is extremely important.
For certain aspects, but
look, I know it depends on the singer in question.
Yeah.
And you can sing in a way that sounds like a musical, where you enunciate every word. Yeah. Or you can kind of like, what's the word? Hip sing. Which I don't know if you've ever seen any of the funny renditions of hip singing, which is the sort of the opposite of that, where it's all just under enunciated and over emoted. There's a happy medium where at least 80% of the words are intelligible.
Yeah.
Not understanding exactly what somebody's trying to say from the perspective of a songwriter, I know that very well, that songs don't often come as super coherent ideas of I'm going to write a song about X, but rather they're a little more Pollock, where you just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks in terms of emotional value. And so when I listen to songs from songwriters I love, part of the thing I love the most is when I don't know exactly what they're trying to say. And in the case of Paul Simon, it's like, where's the line between what he's saying? Is it culturally relevant, because he does that a lot, or
Mhm.
is it, personally important? And not knowing where that line is always is part of one of the wonderful things that I get out of that. And so, yeah, for me, the ambiguity of of the song um, is is very, very important.
Yeah, all songs aren't about love and heartache like when you're writing them when you're 14 years old. So
Sure, but they tend to boil down to that, actually, when you look at it from 30,000 feet. But yeah,
yeah.
kind of. Yeah.
Do you remember the last song that you cried to?
Uh, yeah. Um, there's a couple that really just get me every single time. So there's this band called Mighty Poplar, uh, who has let me just look it up so that I get all the names right. But it's sort of like a super group of uh, the the bluegrass Americana people. Noam Pikelny on the banjo, Andrew Marlin, Chris Eldridge from the Punch Brothers, and stuff. But they do this version, and this is often so for me. They do this song called "The Story of Isaac," which is a Leonard Cohen song, except they reimagine the melody. They basically reimagine the entirety of the song except for the text. And I find that a lot with Cohen songs, that when they're put in the hands of other people, you see the unbelievable brilliance so easily, right? You don't have to do much work. Somebody else has already done that work of understanding how genius something can be. And that song on that album just destroys me every single time, to the point that it's sort of embarrassing. But I just, yeah, that for me, there's this corner of the bluegrass Americana, that really hits me hard. I don't know why. It's a nostalgia for a thing I don't have much relation to. Maybe it's because I live far away from America, but it hits me. It hits me really hard.
So is there any style of that like bluegrass over there that you can find?
I'm sure, but I'm not sure I'm looking for it either.
All right.
You know, You know what I mean? Exactly the same as the Disneyland in Europe.
Yeah.
The bluegrass, not from America, doesn't make that much sense. There are Swedish bands that do it, and they dress up like the real thing and stuff, but it just kind of feels kind of hokey. Um,
All right. With the music that we've been talking about, whether it's bluegrass, Paul Simon, you being classically trained, you being singer-songwriter, is there something that you listen to that people would be like really surprised that you get tons of enjoyment out of listening to? Like, are you like a closet EDM fan, or like, is there something crazy that people like, oh, I never would have expected him to listen to that?
Oh God, something weird that I listen to. Well, yeah, well, my problem is everything I listen to is kind of weird. So then I guess the only weird thing I would listen to is what I like that's really mainstream, right? I guess I have to go from the other direction and go back in. Really mainstream. I really like that Dua Lipa song "New Rules" back in the day. It just, I don't know why, it just really stuck with me. And I love the production and I love the whole thing. And it doesn't sound like anything I would do. And like, look, I'm a modern songwriter. I write a lot of pop music on the side, so it's not totally out of the question for me to listen to something like that. But yeah, I get into pop music now and then, like the super mainstream, and really love it.
I get it. Listen, a good song's a good fucking song, no matter where it's coming from.
Sure, and you never, look, we're all at one corner of our life or another, and you never know when something's going to be like, wow, that's speaking to me for some weird reason, in a way that
Yeah.
I don't expect. Yeah.
All right, you got 5 minutes left to live. World's gonna end. Meteors crashing into the earth. You have to listen to one song and one song only. What are you listening to?
Wow. Wow, that is a difficult question. Familiarity by Punch Brothers.
All right.
Do you know that song?
I don't, but I write it down because then I go listen to people's Another World songs. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you don't know the song, it's sort of a little bit of a disappointing answer. But
I don't think there's any disappointing answers for it because it's your choice.
here,
It's
okay,
kind of
something.
what you're going out
No,
to.
no, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, sure. But Familiarity by Punch Brothers, if you know it. Otherwise, I think uh, American Tune by Paul Simon. That's another one that really gets me.
All right, I'll allow it. I'll allow you to probably flip it.
Yeah. Those are my I'm about to die songs, I guess.
All right, so let's, in light, I've been prefacing this on every show with the recent tragedies we've had out in LA, but this question's been here longer than what was transpiring out there. So if there was a fire in your house and everyone was out safely, all your pets, all your family, all your animals, and you could run in and grab one musical item, whether it be a piece of memorabilia, an instrument, or something, what's the one thing that you're going to grab to save, to take out?
I mean, look, for a former Californian, this is sort of a touchy question. As you know, we lived in Northern California, and if you'll
Yeah.
recall, there were even more fires up there not too long ago.
Yeah.
If I was going to take one instrument that I could not live without, I've had this guitar from a Canadian guy named David Weber that I found in a shop in Brighton. And I think statute of limitations allows me to say this. I was living in the UK as a student and I wasn't allowed to earn any money. And we landed a huge ad. And so I got all this money, and my childish brain said, okay, well, it doesn't matter. I just have to spend all the money. I can't hold on to it. So I
Yeah.
spent all this money. I gave everybody in my bed.
I'm not going to need this.
I'm not going to need it. We're just going to spend it all anyway. So, and it was a cheddar cheese ad, and it was a version of a Paul Simon song. It was really great, absolutely fantastic. But anyway, in Brighton, which is a beautiful little town, I found this beautiful little boutique shop that does not exist anymore that sold really obscure guitars and mandolins. And I found my Weber guitar, and which is, I think he's made like 600 guitars or something like that. I mean, it's like unbelievably rare. It was pretty pricey, and I have kept that thing with me my entire career. And it is still my guitar, and it sounds better than anything else. And I don't change it. I just change the microphone I record it with, and it gets continuously better. It is a fantastic thing. At one point, the tuning pegs lost their how do you say it? They lost their the little screws in them stopped working, so you couldn't tune anymore. And I sent him an email on his 1995 looking website, and he mailed me a box of them for free.
Wow. His AOL account.
I mean, it really, like, the website is, but I cannot recommend these guitars. David, let me just make sure I'm doing it, because it's like David Weber with one or two guitars, one or two Bs. Sorry, guitars. Weber with two Bs, David. Fantastic thing. And yeah, as I said, it's been possibly the only mainstay my entire career.
Yeah. I love how you love it so much, but you would never recommend it to someone.
What do you mean?
You said you wouldn't recommend the guitar for someone.
Oh, no, sorry, excuse me. If I said that, I misspoke. I recommend it wholeheartedly. I just don't know where the hell anybody's going to find it. If you do, buy one. They're beautiful. You see them and they're immediately beautiful. They have this cool headstock. They have no logo. They have no nothing, which is why I'm so unfamiliar with the name or anything. It's like, it's the black headstock, but it's just, ever since I got that thing, it's been my sound.
Well, so it's
recommend
turned you into who you are.
I do recommend it, and it has absolutely turned me into who I am.
Well, if you, all right, music's been a mainstay in your life since you were born, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But if music wasn't the mainstay in your life, do you have any clue of what else you would have been doing in life?
Growing up in Northern California, ag or meth. You know, like,
yeah.
No. In terms of what else do I love, you're asking me basically if I have any hobbies.
Sure.
Yeah, no, it is all consuming, and the beauty of having music as a career is it's not work,
Yeah.
it's your ideas. You're turning your ideas into hopefully bread, and that's really really fun. It can be all consuming. I don't know what I would be doing if I wasn't in music. I don't really have an aptitude for very much else. So thankfully it all worked out. I really did not have a plan B whatsoever. And I love plenty of things, but none of them are financially in the same way that music is hardly financially safe. None of my plan Bs were much better. So yeah,
Yeah.
and I didn't really have any to begin with. So this was always going to be the thing. And
Yeah, easier to climb without a parachute, right? Sometimes it's easier to climb without a parachute.
100%. And like you find out fairly early, am I totally full of shit or am I not? and as long as you're self-reflective, enough, not saying that you can never be enough, but as long as you have a little modicum of self-reflection, you can kind of feel, hey, is this an uphill battle? I mean, it's always an uphill battle, but is it like pulling teeth or is it kind of working out here and there? And thankfully for me, things worked out early enough when I started that I was able to sort of always live from making music. And that just gives you the validation of like, this is where I should be spending more time doing. This is what I should be dedicating all of my resources and attention to. And I mean, it's really rewarding. So I didn't answer your question at all.
No,
But that's all you get.
well, it's totally fine because my next question is, so with the all-consumingness of music in your life, is it hard for you sometimes to turn it off? And when I say turn it off of, thinking, walking around and being out, with a loved one and just being like having that song idea come to your head, do you find times where it's just too consuming?
Well, I think it's important to pick your partner well, and thankfully, though she's not musical, she has respect for what I do and is willing to make space for it. But yeah, I mean, of course, uh, you can't always control these things, and if you do this, it's an all-day job, and it's you don't. I don't want to act like I'm working too hard, but it's it sort of never turns off, um, but I think all of those kinds of questions are really like a lot of them are prioritizing, right? I think it's extremely important to prioritize your family, prioritize the people around you, make those relationships as strong as you possibly can. And I spend a lot of time focused on that. And yeah, I mean, it's not a job, but focusing on making the people around me happy is something I do with hopefully a similar amount of gusto as I do my music. And it's important because it's easy to fail at. So
Well, I like how we just went to there. I think that's a good jumping off point for us, because I'm going to let you prioritize the rest of your evening over there. But before we move into our final segment, which is our weekly threes, which is three things that we're listening to that we like to share with other people, I want to give you a heartfelt thank you so much, Ed, not only for spending the time with me today here, but also for the music you've created and your love and passion for it, because it comes through in spades. I mean, it really is something that as soon as I heard it, I was like, yeah, this is something that I can fuck with. And this is what I'm going to listen to and share it with the world, because it's fucking brilliant. And I think it deserves a big place in other people's lives. And so without creating that music, you and I wouldn't be here worlds away talking to each other. So it shows the importance of music and how it can bring two people from two different walks of life from around the world to just have an awesome, cool, meaningful conversation. And I think that is one of the most important parts of music. And I think it gets taken for granted all the time. And I don't think we use it enough to just know people and get to enjoy their stories. So thank you so much for the creation that brought us together. Because that to me it means the world to me. So thank you.
thank you right back for the recognition and for those incredibly kind words and for having us on here to have the chance to talk about it. That's really wonderful.
So we are in our final segment. It's 3 things you're listening to that you would like people to check out. So Ed, you're going to give 3, and then I give my 3.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to reserve this uh, for my friends then, because that's basically what I listen to anyway. So the first song is called Capricorn by a buddy of mine who lives here in Berlin, who's a great producer named Andrew Applepie. Really, really cool song. I mean, he has a huge catalog, and if you like that sort of really handmade, quirky uh, production music, I mean, it's indie electronica. Really, really cool stuff. I can't recommend it enough. Another one would be my friend that I started that band with when I was 15, 16, that plays the drums and has his studio in Valencia that I mentioned earlier. He just released his first little album of him playing the vibraphone in Latin jazz. And he has a version of Debussy's Clair de Lune that I think is really sick. So give that a listen.
What was his name again?
Sebastian Laverde. And my third thing that you should listen to is my friend Violetta Zironi, who I have written with for a very long time and wrote some fantastic songs with her. And I think the song that we wrote together called Lonely Window is one of my favorite that I've ever had the pleasure of being involved in, but just to hear at the end of the day. So those are my 3.
Nice. Can't wait to check those out. All right, my 3 for this week, everyone. First one is a band called Winter Forever. They're kind of like they're Northwest emo out of Boise, Idaho. They threw out an EP called Home Feels Like a Luxury Hotel. Been rocking that. Next is a band called Glitter Fox, Portland indie rock band with like this southern flair with this female vocal. It's different. And I was just naturally drawn to it. And last but not least, a band called Motorpsycho. It's Motor Psycho. And the name of the album is Nei, Neigh, or Nye, however you're going to want to pronounce that. They're a Norwegian rock band. Just that awesome Norwegian. I mean, as soon as you hear Motorpsycho, one word, yeah,
wow,
you could kind of tell they're Norwegian.
God,
so,
the album art on that is dope.
So those are my 3 for this week. But again, Ed, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Really hope Drew gets over his bronchitis. Maybe we'll have him here soon to tell his story. But Driftwood Choir, I can't thank you enough for it again. Like it's so awesome. So I truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on to talk about it. We're really grateful for the support, and the album is out on March 7th, and we are just so stoked for everybody to hear it.
Well, you know what time it is now, everyone. It's time to go out, listen to Driftwood Choir, and have a great fucking time.
I'm tangled in a thought, like something I forgot. I place it on the fire and turn it into ashes, and the flames they go higher. 'Cause everything moves, everything moves, everything. How are you lost? How are you lost? Everything. The golden path, 'cause everything moves, everything. Right now it's only me, cornered by what's been this burning memory.
Thanks again for tuning into the Hidden Tracks podcast. We hope you enjoyed this week's show. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at HiddenTracks99. Also, send all your submissions to myhiddentracks99@gmail.com. Tune in next week. You may find your new favorite band, and don't forget to go out and have a great fucking time.